I don't know if he's the point guard that I'm most excited to see this year in the Southwest. I'm so excited to see Ja Morant back. So let's talk Memphis Grizzlies, because despite injuries to Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr., who's apparently going to miss opening night, which is a real shame, I'm so excited for this Memphis Grizzlies season, man. How are you feeling about them? We finally got this young, exciting team back.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's hard not to be excited about them. I mean, we got a glimpse of Ja last season, and he
Yep.
was as spectacular as ever. And the you know the Edey pickup, the Edey
Yep.
acquisition is pretty exciting that they were able to land him in the draft, because if he hits, that's a really nice fit, allowing Jaren to kind of go back to playing the four. And yeah, man, it's like they were really good a couple years ago, and then they just had this kind of lost season last year, obviously, and with just an unbelievable amount of injuries. And like the Gigi and Vince news is definitely a bummer, like kind of coming on the heels of that season. It sort of feels like here we go again, but I almost think like because of that, maybe too much is being made of it. Like we were all excited to see Gigi Jackson. We all love Vince Williams Jr. But like, I don't think it's going to cripple them or anything. Like they're a very deep team. If you look at their bench, even aside from those guys, like they've still got Santi Aldama, they've still got Conchar, they've still got Luke Kennard, they've still got the Brandon Clark looked pretty good when he came back at the end of last season. So like they've got plenty of depth. I think they can withstand those two injuries for however long it ends up being, even if it's like the first month of the season, whatever. They'll need those guys at some point, I think. But I think they're going to be just fine. I don't think it's like, I don't know, some of the takes I've seen on Twitter, like in the wake of those bits of news, is kind of a little bit crazy. It's like, okay, we like these guys, but like they're not make or break dudes for this team. As long as Ja and Jaren are healthy and Smart is there, and Bane, of course, like those guys there with Edey, like they've got a squad. My excitement has not been dampened because of the Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams news. So yeah, they could be very good. Like I think they're going to be a playoff team for sure.
Just to highlight how many injuries the Memphis Grizzlies had last season, most NBA fans will know that a team typically has 15 players on their roster. And yeah, you might sign a different couple of guys to two ways through the year. You might make a trade or two. But Memphis cycled through 33 NBA players last year on their roster because they had so many injuries. So they were giving a load of guys from the G League a chance. They were picking up guys on 10-day contracts as well. So hopefully we see that number get down to the 20s, maybe. Let's just pray for a healthy season in Memphis. But the thing that I'm most excited about for the Grizzlies this year is the Morant Edey pick and roll. I've seen Parker Fleming do some really good work online about how that could look. And I think that when we've sort of seen some of the best teams in the last sort of 12 to 24 months really thrive with 5-out systems, with a ton of space, with a big that has to be guarded sort of 30 feet away. I love the fact that Memphis is perhaps going to go more towards, no, we're going to have a guy that is 7'4" with a 7'11" wingspan that weighs 300 pounds. And we're going to create space in a completely different way because he was one of the best screen setters in college for his time at Purdue. He's got an insane catch radius. And it's just one of those, he feels like a player, if you built him on 2K, you'd be really sick of coming up against him in the park, because I think that if he catches the ball within 5 feet, it's probably going in. He's got great touch on both sort of like short roll hooks, I suppose. And obviously anything that he catches facing the basket, he's probably going to dunk. So that relationship is going to be incredible. And I really want to see the space that he can carve out for Ja Morant as well, because Ja obviously has experience playing with a big that sets these bruising screens. He probably had his best time playing next to Steven Adams. So is he going to be able to replicate what Steven Adams did? Is it going to get even crazier from a space perspective? What do you think Ja's ceiling is this year, Brett? Because like you said, they've got a squad, they've got bigs, they can throw sort of multiple options at teams. I'm struggling to put a ceiling on it for me.
Yeah, I think his ceiling, I think is the MVP conversation. You know, like maybe like even all NBA first team. Like I mean, yeah, it's up there. It's up there. if he, gets into the top 5 in MVP voting, even if he ends up as a finalist, like I wouldn't be shocked if this team really lives up to their potential and he's healthy and looks like himself. Like, I think Edey's going to benefit him a lot. I think that was just such a smart pick. And like, maybe if Edey goes to another team, he doesn't amount to much as an NBA player, but situation's everything. Context is everything. And like, he's kind of in a perfect spot to be maximized. So yeah, it's a good point about Steven Adams. Cause like we did see how much that benefited Ja. And then just, you could really feel his absence when he wasn't there. They missed that. So yeah, that's super exciting. Like, I know a lot of people think Edey's going to win Rookie of the Year. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, if he's their starting center and they're, a 50+ win team, and he could be awesome. But I don't know. He's one of the most kind of compelling storylines, I think, of the whole NBA season, just because he is this monster. Like, there's nobody else really like him. He's kind of a throwback, but he's on this really good team. So it's like, I don't know. They might have something really special there, or maybe not. I know a lot of people weren't very excited about him. There was people saying he wasn't draftable or he was a 2nd round guy, like right up until the draft, pretty much. I think he had the buzz started to grow a little bit, like right leading up to the draft. But in like April, there was people saying he's not an NBA player, and now we're talking about him as the starting center on I think a playoff team in the West. So it's interesting. But yeah, it makes for a very intriguing storyline for sure.
And on the other side of that, we're speaking about Rookie of the Year. 2 guys that I really respect: Matt Powers, who's sort of the head of Swish Theory, who I'd love to have on his podcast. We're sort of nailing down some dates, and Chucking Darts as well, who's been so kind to appear on this podcast. By the end of the cycle, I think they both had Zach Edey 1 in that class. So, like you said, Brett, we have it at every end of the spectrum, where it's not draftable to absolute, number 1 pick, obviously sort of context dependent because it wasn't the strongest draft class last year. But I just come back to that relationship with Ja, where I think I don't know if there's a better passer in the league in sort of cramped spaces.
Right.
Luka is amazing at sort of manipulating the double team, but Ja seems to sliver in between the cracks and just sort of find these little wraparound passes that other players can't. And I think of the relationship with Steven Adams, who's an incredible screen setter and everything, but Steven Adams only ever shot on offensive rebounds. If you've just got Zach there and it's just, look, all you've got to do is get the ball to me from 5 feet away, I don't know if there's a guard that I'd rather pair with Edey. And once he gets the ball there, I think Ja could be averaging well north of 10 assists a game this year, because I think he's sort of hovered at around the 8 mark, but he's just such an incredible passer. You give him a target like that, you give him spacing on the outside as well, with Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson. I'm personally hoping that Vince Williams is the starter long-term for this group. I know that might annoy some Marcus Smart fans out there, but those 2 could be a real engine for this team. And I say that as someone who has Jaren Jackson Jr. as like my 25th best player in the NBA. Do you think he's going to have a bounce back year? Do you think it's even a bounce back year, or did the media just sort of sour in perception because he was playing in a really rough situation last time out?
Yeah, I think, and it was kind of on the heels of the whole FIBA thing. And then, like his efficiency obviously dropped off a lot, but like he was playing essentially a role he had never really played in the NBA. Just taking a lot of shots, just carrying a lot of the offensive burden. But I think those were good reps. I think for him and Bane both last season, like there was so many silver linings in that Grizzlies season. Like we could talk about them all day, but I think those are 2 really at the forefront, was just the being like, top primary options at different points during the season for the first time. And like, I thought Bane did pretty well in that. Like, you don't want him as your number 1 guy all season if you're trying to win a championship. I don't think he's quite at that level, but just the fact that he got those reps and like showed that he can be that guy in spots, maybe like in non-Ja minutes, like they're going to kill in those minutes. I think with Bane can kind of run the show there. And same with Jaren, like he's not going to have as big of a role offensively as he had last year, obviously with this team fully healthy, but I think it was good for him to get that experience. And I'm with you. I don't know where I would have him ranked. I haven't thought about that, but probably in that same range. I just think he's such a valuable player. But it'll be interesting to see like where the 3-point shooting goes with him.
Yeah.
That was one where I think we were all pretty excited about it after his, what was it, maybe his second season, where he put up some pretty impressive numbers from three on high volume, and hasn't really come back to that. But that's, I think, still there, and we know about the defense, and he's so young still. He's probably younger than a lot of people realize. So yeah, I think he's going to have. Yeah, I wouldn't even call it a bounce back either, but like I would say he's going to have a better season. Like if I think he could very well have his best season as a pro. And like then now, if we're talking about Edey hitting and Jaren having his best season and then being generally healthier and Ja being there and being himself, like we're really cooking here in Memphis. Like I think people have every right to be optimistic about this team. Like I certainly am. They've got a lot working in their favor right now.
We're talking about a team that was a 50-win team in the two of the last three seasons, i.e. their two last healthy seasons. I see no reason why they can't return to that high watermark, despite the fact that the West has got stronger. Just quick points on Jaren. One of the most efficient isolation scorers last year, and that's sort of like from jump shooting range, because Jackson Jr. was just not able to get to the basket with the sort of lack of gravity that he was playing with last time out. When you're playing with G League guys, when you're playing in a front court with Bismack Biyombo, teams can really load up on you at the rim. But his assist percentage nearly tripled while also maintaining the same kind of turnover rate as well. So he took real strides on the offensive end. I love the fact that Edey, while we've really sort of sung his praises in this segment, he's not the level of name that if you bench him in a fourth quarter, the media is going to sort of like outrage. So they still maintain that flexibility to go to a semi sort of 5 outlook as well. And Desmond Bane, despite, again, the lack of offensive help, he maintained above average true shooting percentage on easily his highest sort of usage load to date. He was getting up and around the 5.5 assist mark as well, with a really good turnover rate. I completely agree, Brett, when you say when Ja isn't on the court, I really expect those two to sort of lead those lineups from an offensive point of view. And then they've also got the ballast of Marcus Smart as well to sort of just run your classical sort of point guard style play. I don't want to talk about trades with every team, but I do sort of look at this roster. I see some actual fungible salary, which seems to be more and more rare these days when we're talking about NBA teams. Do you think maybe they could do with a trade for one more wing? Because in my view, they're probably the most committed teams to two big lineups, with Brandon Clark on the roster, with Zach Edey, with Santi Aldama. I kind of look and I think I wouldn't mind another guy that's sort of regarded as a genuine 3, as a genuine 4, as opposed to having to play these two big lineups.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Vince Williams is probably their best bet in that sort of slot now. They had like the Zaire Williams thing didn't really work out. Like I think that was kind of their hope for him, was to be that guy. And yeah, like there was this, we've definitely talked about this the last few years. Just has kind of been like their whole, like I remember they were talking about maybe trying to get Jaylen Brown a couple years ago, like because that it does feel like they have a lot of big guys and a lot of guards, and you're just going to kind of end up playing a lot of like Marcus Smart at the 3, which might not be the worst thing in the world. Like maybe you can get away with that when you're playing the two bigs for sure. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did some kind of move like that. Maybe nothing like earth shattering, but just to bring in a quality like true wing, true 3 that can help with the spacing a little more. And it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think they need to do it. It doesn't feel as pressing a need as it did in years past. Like I think they're pretty set how they are. I mean, they've got Gigi too, like who I think they're really trying to develop into this ultimate floor spacer. So when he gets back too, he's going to provide some of that. He shoots it from Trey Murphy range. A lot of the time they were encouraging him to do that last year, just letting it rip from 30 plus. So so I don't see too many, even if like they don't have a tradition, like maybe he's more of a 4, like even if they don't have like a traditional kind of 3, I think the things that they would be looking for from that guy can be covered by the personnel that they do have now. So I think they're pretty well set as it stands.
I agree. I think that in seasons past, they were sort of linked to Mikal Bridges. I think Zach Lowe once reported that they were the team that offered 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, and that got turned down somehow. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets ended up getting an even better package from New York a couple of seasons later. But I look and I think, maybe a Simone Fontecchio type could be someone that's just
There you
really useful there from that spacing perspective if you're maybe not ready to trust Gigi in a playoff situation. But he's even spoken about he views himself as sort of the Michael Porter Jr. for this team. I think that would be a phenomenal outcome if he's sort of willing to commit to playing that off-ball role, because a lot of the fear when he was at South Carolina was this guy's going to want to come in and sort of be wing Cam Thomas, if that makes sense. He's going to
Right.
want 25 shot attempts per game. And while he was able to cook towards the end of last year because there weren't necessarily stars on the floor that were demanding touches, it's really important that he's able to sort of scale up and down dependent on who he's playing next to. But yeah, Brett, I think that we're both really excited about the two teams that we're talking about at the top here.